the recording so we don't miss the first part. We've got 6 people watching already. Good crowd online too.
We go by T-Mobile time, so we're almost there. My phone is T-Mobile. All right. It is 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the September 19th DeSoto City Council meeting to order. We'll start with roll call, please.
Daniels.
Here.
Anna Michael.
Here.
Lane.
Here.
Murdoch.
Here.
Ritter.
Here.
Thank you, council. Everyone's present, Mayor.
Okay. I would invite you all to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item tonight is a proclamation regarding Constitution Week. And I will read that proclamation now. Whereas our founding fathers, in order to secure the blessings of liberty for themselves and their posterity, did ordain and establish a Constitution for the United States of America, and whereas it is one of the greatest importance that all citizens fully understand the provisions and principles contained in the Constitution in order to support, preserve, and defend it against all encroachment, and whereas the 232nd anniversary of the signing of the Constitution provides an historic opportunity for all Americans to realize the achievements of the framers of the Constitution and the rights, privileges, and responsibilities it affords. And whereas the independence guaranteed to American citizens, whether by birth or naturalization, should be celebrated by appropriate ceremonies and activities during Constitution Week, September 17th through the 23rd, 2019, as designated by proclamation of the President of the United States of America in accordance with Public Law 915. Now, therefore, I, Rick Walker, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of DeSoto in the state of Kansas, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through the 23rd, 2019 as Constitution Week in the city of DeSoto, and urge all citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of our Constitution had in 1787 by diligently protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. Our next item is our consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have approving the minutes of our council meeting of September 5th and approval of pay ordinance 862. Any questions or discussion of the consent agenda items? If not, a roll.
I'll make a motion we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Anna Michael.
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Daniels.
Yes.
Murdoch.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Motion carried.
Okay. Our next item is call to public. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to comment about any matter relating to city business not listed on tonight's agenda. Comments that are discussed under call to public may or may not be acted on by the council during this meeting. There is a 4-minute time limit. Please stand and wait to be recognized. Does anyone wish to address the council tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on. Old business, we have none, so we'll go to number 4, new business. Item A, consider ordinance establishing City of DeSoto Emergency Operations Plan.
Thank you, Council. The proposed DeSoto Emergency Operations Plan, or the EOP, being presented tonight is a culmination of a year's work by myself as the city's emergency manager and Carrie Gerst, the Assistant Director of Planning with Johnson County Emergency Preparedness. The state had made available a new emergency planning tool through Bold Planning, which we used to develop the base plan and the annexes for the plan which you had been provided. An emergency operations plan is a core preparedness document that describes in detail how an organization will respond to an emergency. Specifically, FEMA describes EOPs as plans which describe who will do what, as well as when, with what resources, and by what authority before, during, and immediately after an emergency. Unfortunately, just having a plan on paper and a software program doesn't ensure that the plan will actually be effective in a real event. Effective EOPs rely on emergency support functions, ESFs. These are the key functional areas, their associated coordinating and support agencies and departments, and the actions that should be taken to support the function pre-event, during the event, and post-event. Emergency planning should not be an afterthought to push onto subordinate staff. Leadership should be engaged and visible. Staff should see the plan as a high priority for senior management with expectations of full accountability for participation. This FEMA NIMS process also requires that our leadership participate through taking the NIMS courses IS 100, 700, and 800. Some of us have had those, some of you will need those. Emergency preparedness planning should be viewed as an ongoing program without an end date. Our plan will require updates as we go forward, and additional city staff will certainly be involved through training and awareness of what is needed to be prepared for an event if and when it may occur. I'd welcome any questions or discussion you might have that I can help you with.
Do we know who's had what NIMS courses? I know I've gone through some.
Lan and I looked at that, and we don't have that list together yet. If you have those certificates and you know which ones you've passed, it would be beneficial to us if you would help us.
So could you give us that information if we should be going through one of those courses? Like,
We're going to make
members?
the information available. We can either do a education time here through emergency preparedness will come out, or all of those programs now are available online, so they can be taken at your convenience. Most of them are from an hour. The longest one, I think, is the 700, and I believe it's like supposed to be like a 7-hour course, but obviously you can take it quicker.
Any other questions for Steve? I know we've all had the document for the past several weeks to review, so if
It's a lot
not,
of work. Good
I'd
job.
like to say,
go ahead, Danny.
I'd like to say that I want to commend Steve for the work that he put in on this. I know it was complicated and took a lot of hours to complete, and he did a very good, thorough job on it. And I know working with Kevin and Steve and Lana, and it was just a blessing that he took all that in consideration and put in all that time. I just want to make sure Mike knew that. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Someone wish to make a motion to,
I'd like to make a motion. We accept ordinance number 2477.
Second.
we have a motion, and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Michael,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Motion carried.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Item 4B, consider Planning Commission recommendation to deny rezoning request at the northwest corner of 95th and Sunflower. Brad?
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. What you have before you is a rezoning request by applicant Sims Global Solutions. Submitted an application to rezone a 22-acre tract on the northwest corner of 95th and Sunflower Road. The address is 35960 West 95th Street. The proposed use is warehousing, truck transportation, and management of the company. These are uses that are all allowed in M1. Our process, as you know, is Planning Commission conducts a public hearing and makes a recommendation to the City Council, who makes the final action on this item. The Planning Commission did recommend denial with a 6-0 vote. With that, we still need to go through the process and take the council through the same issues and things that we discussed at the Planning Commission a couple of weeks ago. So I will go through the staff report, start with the application background. The rezoning application was dated 6/24, requesting the change from RUR agriculture to M1 light industrial. The reason it's RUR is because it was annexed into the city, and current state statutes require that the annexed property retains the county zoning until it is actually rezoned within the city limits of DeSoto. So that's why it has the RUR agriculture designation at this time. On page 2 of your staff report shows the existing zoning map for DeSoto. As you can see, there's the tract to be rezoned. The white areas are Johnson County, rural or unincorporated Johnson County. The other areas are DeSoto city limits. As you can see within the zoning map, there's a mix of commercial, heavy industrial, light industrial at our water tower site, agriculture in this area. So there's quite a mix within the zoning categories. However, the land use is agriculture and rural residential in this area. Just real quick, notification letters were sent out to the property owners nearby. Within city limits, it's 200 feet. Outside of city limits, the notification area is 1,000 feet. We did place a sign up. The public hearing was advertised in the legal record, so we did cover all bases as far as the required notification of landowners in the area. Just a real brief summary of the Planning Commission meeting. You do have the minutes in your packet as well. The Planning Commission had 6 portions of their recommendation for denial, and the primary concerns were from the residents were the traffic that would be generated, the lack of public utilities. The sanitary sewer would have to be a private septic system, which isn't necessarily the best for us operation of this size, even though it can work and it is doable. Lighting from the building, potential noise and buffering and screening in this area. Staff actually recommended approval of this for primary reasons. This area has been in DeSoto's urban growth area for 20 years. And as we've been moving through our current comprehensive plan, which of course we were right in the middle of adoption, so we had to actually look at both the previous comp plan and the potential future one, which now has been adopted, has confirmed it's been in the urban growth area, and we are now really bringing forth ways to serve this area with DeSoto water, DeSoto sewers in this region. So, and then of course the economic development, up to a potential 100 jobs, increased property values and taxes, which would be beneficial for the city. Did cover the zoning and the surrounding land use. You do have the right there's the future comp plan. There's the tract to be zoned, which we have shown as a series of light industrial tracts along Sunflower Road, mixed use to the east of Sunflower, and then residential to the west of this area. So that is the current comp plan that was adopted by the council at the previous meeting. I'm going to go through the zoning capability or compatibility factors. The first item is character of the neighborhood, that is including but not limited to zoning, existing and approved land use, plating density, and natural features. Sort of covered some of this previously with the surrounding zoning of the area. So you can see it's sort of a mix of commercial, heavy industrial, light industrial, agriculture in this area. That's just the zoning. Of course, the land use is primary rural and residential. Of course, the Sunflower Army ammunition plant is nearby. There's the abandoned water plant that's there, and then a little bit farther to the south is Lumber One, which is also a M1 light industrial district. So you can tell there's a lot of different types of activities in this area. But with the fact that there's those different types of activity, it's also a rural and residential area. So we are neutral in favor of granting or not granting this rezoning request. Compatibility of the proposed zoning and uses permitted therein with the zoning and uses of nearby property. Now, if you're just looking totally at the zoning, there's a lot of different mixes of zoning, and we felt that this zoning would fit within this area, and that's also based on our comprehensive plan that was adopted and the current zoning map that we currently have on file. Suitability of the uses to which the property has been restricted under its existing zoning. Of course, it's just been recently annexed into the city, but this tract could not be put to use in the manner asked for by the applicant under the RUR zoning. Of course, the length of time the properties may remained vacant as zoned. It's only been, once again, in the city for a few months, so it's really not a good judge of whether or not the zoning or rezoning is an appropriate gauge in this case. To the extent in which there is a need in the community for these uses allowed in the proposed zoning, there's not a specific need for residents to zone of this type other than the general benefit of economic development and growth, tax revenue, which do benefit the citizens and the city as a whole. At this point, we're at the section Mike was going to take over, the utilities and transportation. So
Sure.
I'll let him take that.
Okay,
portion.
yeah, just quickly summarizing the findings there. I think we're mostly aware sewers are not available here, as Brad said before. The site would rely on the on-site sewage disposal system, a relatively large system that could be designed to handle this type of use, an office setting use. The applicant indicates possibly future occupancy of about 78, 80 employees maybe. So we're comfortable that a system could be designed on the site to accommodate that. However, it is in an area that we do plan on having public sewer mains available in the future. And I've shown kind of our existing map of how that might be accomplished. The water, the property is actually in the water service territory of Johnson County Rural Water 7. And I think we've discussed before, we're kind of in the middle of negotiating or establishing future service territories. And as that discussion sits right now, this area would remain in their service territory. Today it's there and it would remain there. They do have a 12-inch water main along 95th Street that could provide a degree of service. However, we still don't really know if they have quite the fire flow capability to serve that. However, our water tower is directly adjacent to the corner of the site, and I think we're pretty comfortable that if Rural 7 couldn't provide fire flow service, we could under an understanding and arrangement with Rural 7. From a utility standpoint, the other utilities, gas and electric are available along Sunflower and 95th Street, so they're relatively available. We found overall a neutral finding on this, mostly because of the sewer and the system that would be needed to install there would be a pretty large and costly system. So the finding on utilities is neutral. The next item is actually mine too, and this is probably the biggest item, the biggest obstacle to the development of this site, as they have proposed in an N1 district, is the road network. A lot of what we heard at the public hearing at the Planning Commission had to do with truck traffic or just general traffic on Sunflower Road and 95th Street. Definitely acknowledge that those roads are substandard, and care must be taken if we want to approve an M1 zoning district, mostly because with the zoning approval, you're not approving a particular use. So we know we do have a particular use that wants to go in there, and that's a logistics company, and they've submitted a traffic study specific to that use, and that traffic study shows a minimal amount of trucks entering and leaving the site, less than you would assume from a trucking logistics company. They're only talking about 2 to 5 trucks per day. So in that context, it would seem like the truck traffic impact could be mitigated, especially since we're extending 91st Street as we speak, and then the trucks would only travel on a portion of Sunflower Road that's about a quarter mile in length. So it appears like that would be mitigated. However, with the rezoning to M1, there could be other uses in the M1 that generate a lot of truck traffic. So, if the current proposal goes away, the property is still zoned M1, somebody comes and buys it and puts some heavy generator in there, that wouldn't be favorable. So, with those things in mind, the road network is definitely the weak link, I think, from a staff perspective. As we saw this, definitely the weak link of the proposal. And so we found an overall negative finding on that particular criteria. So Brad, I think I'll turn it back over to you now. Environmental impacts.
All right, thank you, Mike. The environmental impacts that we evaluated includes stormwater runoff, water pollution, air pollution, noise pollution, excessive nighttime lighting, and other potential impacts. I feel like these items can be mitigated based upon a site plan review, which is required through the Planning Commission. Also, our city code requires that erosion control, stormwater, noise, lighting all become screened or buffered. We do have noise ordinances that limit noise into the evening, and it does restrict noise even to a greater degree from 7 a.m. or from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. and over in the morning. Economic impacts to the community uses for the proposed zoning. Ultimately, we think there's a benefit for the community to have this type of economic activity in DeSoto. As I had mentioned before, it is in our urban growth area, so we are positive in favor of granting this rezoning request. The extent to which the zoning amendment may detrimentally affect nearby property, there are clear potential detrimental effects on the nearby residents of this activity. As Mike mentioned, some due to the additional surface vehicle traffic. There will be some noise, even though we do have codes and requirements for buffering and lighting and things like that. And the applicant did submit a photometric plan for lighting, showing that none of the light would spill off the property. We'll still see some light. There will be some noise generated and other side effects that could be a problem for some individuals. However, we believe that through the site plan review process, we can mitigate those potential negative assessments. I think one also, and Mike had mentioned this earlier, was that we had some discussion with the Planning Commission as we are actually looking at all the uses, even though we have one particular use in mind. You do have to look at all the potential uses in the M1 district for this activity. Finally, the relative gain in public health, safety, and welfare from denying this rezoning application. I don't think there would be, or staff has determined that there would be little to gain for the citizens of DeSoto in denying this rezoning request. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we had to take a look at our previous plan at this time, and then also the future or the current comp plan. Both plans show this activity as a growth and development area. The previous plan showed it as a mixed-use type area, and the current plan shows it as a light industrial area, which fits quite well into what we had considered through the development of our comprehensive plan. Final recommendation of professional staff was to approve this item, even though there were some significant negatives, and it's not something we took lightly when we made this recommendation, but we felt that we have a belief in our city code and the enforcement capabilities that we do have to integrate this type of use within this area of DeSoto, and ultimately think that having the businesses that will potentially employ 70, 80, and even up to 100 people would be a benefit to DeSoto as a whole. But with that, as we note, the Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the City Council. The Planning Commission did recommend 6-0 to deny. And with that, I will stand for any questions that you all may have.
Okay. Any questions for Brad? Before I do that, maybe I'll just make my statement I wanted to make that before we have a full house here, so I want to tell you what we're doing here tonight right now. This is not a public hearing item. The public hearing occurred during the Planning Commission meeting. The council heard your testimony during those meetings, and we have the minutes from that meeting, so we've reviewed those comments, and we don't need to hear those again for our benefit here tonight because we have already been exposed to those. If you do have some new information, some new compelling information that was not presented at the Planning Commission that you would like to present tonight, we can hear that now. I would like to limit the comment time to no more than 15 minutes approximately. And each presenter, I would ask that you would not take more than 3 minutes. Is that acceptable to everybody on the council?
Mayor, if I could, just one thing I didn't mention was there is a valid protest petition that has been submitted. And so it will require a supermajority of the council to approve this or override the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Okay.
So,
Right, so you could just have one no vote. You need five positive votes.
And Patrick, could you run through kind of the range of options of actions that are available here?
Sure. You could pass the ordinance that was in the packet, which would uphold the Planning Commission recommendation. You also could send the matter back to the Planning Commission with direction of things that you want the Planning Commission to re-examine or take another look at. Or you could approve the rezoning request with a three-quarter majority. If there was no protest, it would be a 2/3 majority, but with the protest petition, it becomes a three-quarter majority. So, and that's of the entire body, including the mayor. So, three-quarter majority of the 6-member body would be, you would need 5 votes in favor of the rezoning in order for it to pass.
Okay.
And just one other thing, in the ordinance you have in your packet, and as Brad and Mike went through the criteria, I always recite that under section 1, there are several of the what are commonly referred to as the golden factors. So the ordinance reflects that in making your decision that those criteria were considered by you, and that's to be in compliance with Kansas law on rezonings.
Okay. So again, I would extend the invitation. If anybody had any new testimony to provide to the council, we would hear it now. Otherwise, we can discuss and move forward. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address.
My name is Becky Gallagher. I'm at 9130 Sunflower Road. Just today I was driving home at like 3:30 and my daughter's bus was coming down 95th Street. And as we were coming up to one another, I had to pull all the way over to the edge of the road, and the edges of 95th Street are very crumbly. And in addition to that, there was a utility locator truck parked along the edge of 95th Street on a hill, so the sight view was very limited. And I couldn't help but think, what is 95th Street going to be like? Because Sims Global actually did not answer one of our really important questions last time, which was how many trucks that don't belong to you will be coming in and out on a daily basis. And it was asked and not answered, and then I asked it again, and it was still not answered. And these are the types of trucks that they have on their Facebook page that they advertise that could be coming in, the types of loads that could be coming in and out. And if a school bus was to meet one of these loads, what are they going to do? Are they going to back all the way down to Lexington? Are they going to back all the way down to, past 95th Street? These are pretty big loads. And also because of our vantage point, also this isn't really something I really want to see right there at K10, from driving down K10 to see shipping containers stacked. These are all from Sims directly from their Facebook page. And I just was, where we are with the vantage point of watching the new road being built, which we're actually really excited about that because that's a straight line to Casey's and we're super excited. But those trucks are struggling turning in and out of that road. And those are just concrete trucks and some asphalt trucks. These trucks are much longer, much wider, much heavier, and those roads are crumbling already. And so that's what I'm very concerned about, the safety and the road system. And then again, from the other side, from Edgerton Road, that's even narrower and more site restricted. So.
Okay, thank you. Necessarily new. Again, if it's new, I would like to hear it, but if it's a repeat of what was already said, I don't think we need to hear that.
Okay. Nancy Moneymaker, 36715 West 95th Street. Okay, I'm going to read mine. So the main argument I'm hearing to consider this rezoning to M1 or light industrial is that it is in the 2019 comprehensive plan that I hear was adopted only a few weeks ago. So in the 2019 comprehensive plan, chapter 1, page 1, it states that the purpose and the intent of the plan is to establish general guidelines with no specific time frame, with some of the goals and ideas being difficult to attain in the near term, and as a dynamic and ever-changing plan. It also states on the same page that it is not a static blueprint for future development that the city must follow. Also on the same page, according to case law in the Kansas Supreme Court, conformance to the city's comprehensive plan is one of several factors which should be considered when evaluating the appropriateness of future land use decisions. So at the August planning meeting, a comment from the commission stuck with me. It went along the lines of, whoever brings the money builds. I hope that you all don't take that line of thinking. The commission ended up not recommending this rezoning, and I hope you also come to that same conclusion. M1 has many industrial uses, which we did talk about, some of which we would not want in the DeSoto area. If we rezone now to M1, then we have an attitude just mentioned, we will be doing our city a major disservice. I don't blame Sims Global, the potential buyer, for attempting to purchase 22 acres of prime flat M1 land at C2 prices and tax abatement. Then I hear adding an additional 20 acres on the south side of 95th at Sunflower that is recently under contract. This is a combined 42 acres for a proposed 10-acre development. I don't blame the seller not currently living in the area for selling unwanted land for whatever price he can get to whoever will buy. When considering factors in evaluating the current appropriateness of this land use, I believe we are jumping the gun and not ready for this type of development at the proposed site. Semi-truck traffic will move along the narrow 2-lane, 23-foot wide tar and gravel 95th Street, or along the narrow 2-lane, 24 wide tar and gravel Sunflower Road, as measured by my husband with a tape measure. In the comprehensive plan, chapter 1, page 2, it states, future infrastructure investments are still needed to facilitate development within the city's current boundaries, such as along the 95th Street corridor. Another route suggested is along Sunflower to 91st Street that is currently being extended. Semi-trucks along 91st would then pass by DeSoto High School and Starside Elementary School, along with at least one roundabout. Today's online agenda, page 13, states that for light industrial, uses should be located along major roadways. The agenda goes on to state that centers that generate high volumes of truck traffic are recommended in sites not connected to residential areas. Another factor is to address a comment made by the CFO of Sims Global in August of not running loaded trucks. This does not make sense when considering their proposed use of warehousing, truck transportation, and company management, as also stated on today's online agenda. The comprehensive plan, chapter 4, page 18 states, future annexation and growth should not occur until the city has identified substantial support from DeSoto residents. Any potential areas considered for future growth should be a win-win for all parties. Also, future growth and development that is not consistent with this plan, the city's zoning regulations, and not supported by local residents and property owner should be avoided. The city must also have a plan in place for the programmed extension of infrastructure and services before proposing any future development. Chapter 3, page 20 states that the foundation of this plan rests on the belief that DeSoto's elected and appointed officials will do what is necessary to seize the opportunity to improve the existing commercial and residential areas, create new housing options, and attract businesses that cater to the needs of DeSoto residents. I don't think that this rezoning caters to the needs of DeSoto residents.
I hate to interrupt. You're at 5 minutes now. I let you already.
I'm done.
go long, so-
That was it.
All right, good.
And if you look at how many bays, there's, I don't know, 20 bays. So they do plan on extending it
Okay.
quite a bit.
Thank you.
Brenda Barger, 9350 Rowan Road. And I just wanted to give a brief timeline looking at the future land use proposed plan. As recent as April 2019, it was given to the Planning Commission. This property was presented as mixed use, so that was in April. Then at the June 25th, it was presented to the Planning Commission. That particular page that should have included the map was blank. So the assumption is that there was no change to that designation. In July, a draft version was presented to the City Council, and it showed this particular property as light industrial. And this was the first public presentation of this land use to be light industrial. And however, this page had not been publicly presented to the Planning Commission. Then July 23rd, there was no Planning Commission, so there could not have been any update to this map. Then in August, the draft version was presented to the Planning Commission. And this is the first time that the Planning Commission was publicly presented this map. It was discussed in this meeting, that within the map there's the conflict with the light industrial being right against residential. So there's a conflict within your own designations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Questions from council, just Brad or Mike? Comments?
Do you want to start? Comment-wise, I think one of the difficult things is when it comes to rezoning, as we've gone through, when we go through criteria, that's really what we're looking at is criteria and the different factors, the compatibility factors that we go through. But, it's staff and, different people that are coming up with their ideas. A different group of staff maybe would have come up with a whole different idea. And in this particular situation, staff was willing to recommend it mainly because there was more neutral and positive than there were negative type statements. But that doesn't mean that one major negative can't outrule the other ones, as what Planning Commission found in their discussion on it. So I think that, I just wanted everybody to kind of realize that when we're doing this, we do look at these particular compatibility factors or things that we do have to look at. When we first start looking at this and, the light industrial or, the changes in the plan, I think probably, if anybody, Mike can probably talk more about that as far as through what the last lady, what you were talking about there. But, you know, if you look at the original comprehensive plan, you know, some of that area on the the southeast side there was light industrial in that plan. So it's moved. So the light industrial moved across the road and up, but there, you know, it's not like we're all of a sudden throwing light industrial into that area. You know, there's a lumber yard there now with truck traffic, I'm sure. I don't think it's as heavy from the studies as maybe what would happen with this one. You know, but there has been different zoning changes along there, and also as what was stated, the comprehensive plan is pretty static. I mean, it can change, and things can kind of go differently. So, but I think, you know, everybody understands the roads as being a big issue, and you know, the traffic and how many there's going to be, and I think the big, you know, concern for anybody is that if they're only using a section of this land, what about the rest of it? You know, what could change or what could happen in the future once it is rezoned that? So all of that, I think, you know, we totally understand. Like the mayor said, we've read all the concerns, and, you know, everyone up here has the same kind of issues and concerns. So as far as the EDC side of things, you know, that's always something that is really difficult when we give incentives and we don't give incentives. You know, economic development and this particular project is a good project in general. In DeSoto somewhere would be great, whether or not it's in this spot or not. It does have good jobs coming in. They're good paying jobs. Those are the type of things that we need for our community. And it leads to more economic progress with homes being sold and people buying at restaurants and grocery stores and every other retail business that's in there. So when you're adding, you know, 80 jobs, you could be potentially adding 80 families to your community. So those are the type of things what we look at when we're looking at economics. So as you can see, you know, there's a lot of things that we don't take this lightly in any way. There's a lot of factors that go into every decision we make. And I just wanted everybody to, you know, kind of understand that when we're looking at things. And when it comes to incentives, you know, that really has not been spoken about in public anyway. So anything that you may have heard is, you know, is just all kind of what is a potential incentive, not necessarily what the city would or would not have done, whether it comes or does not come. So those are things that haven't really been even made public at this point in time. So I guess that's maybe kind of
Okay.
just some points that I wanted to let
All
the
right.
community understand.
Anyone else?
I was going to say, I was at the planning commission meeting where it was brought up. There were a lot of valid points. There were some points that were less valid, but the road conditions and the roads were one of the biggest issues that came up as far as being able to handle it and not being ready for it yet. But one thing, and it's just something I started looking at tonight, is hearing about the safety of the school, the safety of the kids. The school is built next to light industrial. You live across the street from light industrial. So with Merck and with everything else there, this rezoning potential doesn't really come way far outside of what's in that area right now. You've got M2 heavy industrial with the rock quarry just a few blocks and a little bit away from this area. So while I understand and I agree with a lot of what happened at the Planning Commission as far as the road conditions, that area is already heavily that way. The schools are sandwiched in light industrial. So, and that's not rezoning, that's current zoning, current business, current placement. So in the future, as we do look at this, a lot of it would, with the future land use, fall within some of those areas pending. So while the conditions aren't favorable now, it is possible that in the future with road improvements, things like that, that they absolutely would be, in my opinion.
Well, it might also be some sort of economic development that brings the road necessity upgrade, not versus, the road being built first. So I agree with that too.
Danny, anything to comment tonight?
No.
Do we have, is the applicant represented tonight?
Yeah, anyone from Sims wish to speak to that? Add anything for our benefit?
My name is Todd Foster. I'm Sims's representative, and I'm just here to answer any questions you guys might come up with. I'm his realtor. Nobody else from the development team or company could make it, so my knowledge is not complete, but if there's any questions, I'd answer them to the best of my ability. Thank
Any
you.
questions for? Okay.
Is it possible to ask a question?
I don't know that it would add anything or help
Well, it's
anything.
from Mr. Daniels. He said,
Oh, no, we won't do a back and forth. I'm sorry. No, thank you. After the meeting, you can send him an email or converse with him, but not in the meeting. I thought the council or the commission, particularly Commissioner Manson, expressed his thoughts very well. He presented concisely what the challenge was with the rezoning of this property, and I would commend him for doing his homework and presenting his argument well. I would echo what Lori said, that development like Sims Global, it's a strong young company that has got a good growth path ahead of it and a lot of strong, well-paying jobs right now. And I think businesses like that, I would like to encourage to come invest in the city. But I think beyond that, I don't have anything else to add. I understand the challenges of Sunflower Road. The street network, 91st Street, the access is a little challenged, the Sunflower Road piece, but 91st Street, limited truck traffic on 91st Street is already going to happen. So I'm not concerned that we're going to load 91st Street with a lot of trucks that would create issues for the safety of our kids at those schools. I think the road's well designed. There's width. The intersections will be, when improvements are all implemented, will be adequate to carry the traffic. But beyond that, I don't have anything else to add. So I would just entertain whatever the council wish to do with respect to action on this item. Just to recap that, we can move to approve the motion and accept the Planning Commission's recommendation for denial, send it back to the Planning Commission with some additional direction, or vote to override and approve the rezoning.
I'll make a motion. We approve ordinance 2478 denying rezoning of property at 35960 West 95th Street.
And I will second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or discussion of the motion?
I might just add, having served on a planning commission for 13 years in DeSoto, I have a lot of respect for the process that they went through. It's obviously a challenging application. I have respect for the process that's laid out by statute of the role of the planning commission body to hear this issue and to evaluate the golden criteria and all of the other factors that play into it. So I respect what they did. As, however, a representative, one of the council representatives on the EDC, I got to echo what Commissioner Lori said and Mayor Walker said, that I want to be clear that we are separating the particular project that's driving this rezoning request from the rezoning action that's occurring on this particular parcel. Because I think, as it's been stated, by several people now that it is largely consistent with visions of our comprehensive plan that have been in effect for decades. And I also want to be careful that we don't create question or ambiguity as to the charge of our EDC, and that is to go find businesses that are that grow our community, that create good job opportunities, and that create prosperity through increased tax base and commercial activity in our community. So I hope that the action on this ordinance does not create confusion between the type of projects and the objective of our EDC to grow the community in ways that are consistent. But in the end, I got a tremendous amount of respect for the role of the Planning Commission in this decision.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Roll call, please.
Lane,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Hanamichael,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdoch.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion carried.
Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Mayor.
You too. Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. My apologies.
That's all right. Okay. I would like to thank you all for being patient and sitting here. I mean, I appreciate the way you're listened to the meeting and kept your comments quiet during the discussion. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Our next item is to consider Planning Commission recommendation to approve rezoning request at 29150 West 83rd Street.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Included in your packet is an application from Kip Saxon, who has a contract to purchase the property to the west, to the east of the carriage houses on 83rd Street. The site is currently zoned RO, Rural Suburban. It's been that way for many years. Notifications were sent out to property owners within the 200-foot buffer on August 1st. A public hearing was also posted in the paper, and the sign was posted on the property as well. Staff has not heard any comments or calls from any individuals who received notices on this item. The allowable uses in the RO subdivision include single-family homes, nursing, group care facilities, education, bed and breakfast, and religious uses are allowed by special use permit. The minimum lot size in the RO zoning district is 1 acre because the city sanitary sewer is not available. I've also included in your packet the entire list of zoning districts and uses, and it's highlighted for the RO subdivision. So you can see the existing zoning map. The carriage houses to the west are a planned unit development. The area to the north is the Union Pacific Railroad, and also unincorporated Johnson County that's actually property owned by the county for the boat ramp, and then farther north of that is City of Olathe property, which they use for some of their lime disposal operations. To the south is the Cedar Valley Forest, which does have somewhat, it's zoned agriculture, however, it does have seasonal retail uses with Christmas trees. And then also farther to the north, I guess, has the Sahara sand plant in this area as well. So there's a lot of different types of land uses in this activity, or in this area. However, one of the interesting things about this would be the first full-fledged zoning change to commercial. While there's some sort of ancillary and types of uses that are compatible with commercial in this area, this would be the first, as I mentioned, C2 designation in this area. We'll go through some of the same rezoning compatibility factors that we went through previously tonight, including character and neighborhood. As I mentioned, the surrounding area has the railroad tracks. Cedar Creek is also to the east of this area. Carriage houses, planned unit development. Also the Shawnee Nation Shawnee Nation reservation is there, which did have some sort of commercial uses up until recently. on that location. Compatibility of the proposed zoning uses permitted therein with the zoning uses of the nearby property. This area is kind of a developing area. As I mentioned, there's some commercial type activity. There's certainly commercial activity going on, whether or not it's retail sales, things like that, but it is certainly an area where there's economic activity happening in this location. Suitability of the uses which the property has been restricted under its existing zoning. This tract could not be put to use under the existing RO zoning category for commercial uses. In this case, the length of time the properties remain vacant as zoned. This is a good test on this site. The site has been used as a commercial property for many years, but it has been abandoned and unkept for several years. So I see this as an opportunity for redevelopment of this site if the rezoning request is granted. The applicant who is here tonight has indicated that the site will be completely redeveloped in a full-fledged landscape business, and the redevelopment of this property will certainly benefit DeSoto. The availability of the required utility and services in this area, which includes sanitary sewer, storm sewer, water, electric, gas service, police and fire. Public service accommodations, police, fire, parks and schools will see no change from previous accommodation or previous conditions. There's a City of DeSoto water main that runs along 83rd Street, so they will have access to DeSoto potable water. They will be required to have a private septic system. However, it won't be nearly as significant as what we were talking about previously, even though it will be a commercial use. Parking on this location, there will be no parking allowed on 83rd Street. All parking will be on site and must be paid for any kind of customers that come and go in this location. As far as environmental impacts, there would be no particularly significant impacts to this area. This tract does have a large portion of its area in the flood zone. However, the simple fact of rezoning the property from RO to C2 will not have a significant impact on the surrounding environment. The economic impact on the community from the uses allowed in this proposed rezoning. The site is not used at all at this point and is really kind of an eyesore. We'll be potentially redeveloping it to a viable commercial opportunity, which will benefit DeSoto through increased property taxes, potential sales taxes, employment, and overall economic activity. The extent which the zoning amendment may detrimentally affect nearby property, there's no anticipated detrimental effect on nearby properties. There is one residential area that would potentially be impacted, but is actually on the east side of Cedar Creek. There's a large thicket of trees between this property and the residents. The resident did get a letter in this notification in our buffer area, and I've not received or heard any kind of questions or comments from them. So it's positive in this instance. Relative gain to the public health, safety, and welfare from denial of this rezoning application. Staff has determined there would be little to gain from adjacent neighborhoods in the denial of this application. In fact, we feel just quite the opposite. It would help us get rid of an old dilapidated building that's been sitting vacant for many years. This rezoning request is consistent with our comprehensive plan, and it is an area that is at least served by city water, and certainly the potential private wastewater system certainly can be installed without any kind of significant impact to the environment. It is the recommendation of our professional staff that we approve this rezoning request and that any potential negative impacts to neighbors would be minimal and will be handled through a site plan process. The Planning Commission did recommend unanimously to the City Council to approve this rezoning request. So at this point, I'll stand for any questions that you all may have.
Questions for Brad on this application?
Yeah, how much of the 6.2 acres are in the floodplain?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. It's about, well, as you can see, Dan, it's over half of the area.
You see the screen there.
Yeah. Okay.
But there's flood zone and floodplain in this area. So it's, you can see it's about 2/3, but a lot of it's going to be used for
a problem with a septic area in this away from that floodplain.
Yeah, it'll have to be, it cannot be, the septic cannot be in the floodplain or flood
Yeah.
zone.
So there's
And,
still
then, and they
enough.
really can't, and we've got the expert here if you want to ask Steve those questions. He'll be very happy to answer them for you.
Okay.
Any other questions? I would echo that, it would be nice to remove that unsightly land use there. It was used as a landscape business for, in a prior life, but not too attractively. So through a site planning process, we'll get a lot cleaner, more attractive business on our front door.
Can I make a motion?
Sure.
Okay, I make a motion, we approve the rezoning request for 29150 West 83rd Street, item 2479.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion?
Just to clarify, I think Councilman Lane said item 2479. The record will reflect ordinance 2479.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Michael,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Mayor, motion carried.
Okay. Item 4D. Consider request from RG Fiber for extension of contractual deadline for conduit construction. Mike?
Yes, council. Our design build agreement with RG Fiber has several deadlines in it related to the provision of broadband service throughout the community. There's three main deadlines. The first deadline is essentially a 6-month deadline from the commencement date to provide conduit, that seven-way conduit bank within the area south of K10 in the unserved area. That was 180 days from the construction commencement date, which in the case of this contract was January 18th. There's also a completion date 2, which is a year from that date to actually provide service to that unserved area. And then there's a completion date 3, which is 24 months from that to provide broadband service throughout the community. This spring, with the wet spring, it became apparent that RG was going to miss that first completion date. So they requested an extension under the force majeure clause of the contract to extend that deadline for a period of time. The first request was to extend that deadline from April 16th to July 27th. I granted that request administratively, as is allowed in the contract. As we approach the April 27th deadline, again, similar conditions existed in terms of weather and other unrelated delays. So they requested a second extension, which I also granted. And that extension granted that deadline until September 10th, which has now passed. RG, prior to that date, talked about the need for a third extension. And I thought it appropriate, because of the importance of this project to the community, that we bring that to the council for direction. So I think technically, although the contract still has administrative approvals of that under my purview, I'm bringing the issue here tonight for your direction as to what to do about the latest extension. In your packets, I've included the entire contract. I've highlighted the sections that relate to the contract deadlines, the completion dates, the force majeure clause, and the sections related to what we're talking about now. Also included the 2 previous letters where I granted the previous extensions, and RG's most recent request, and the reasoning behind the need for this current extension was also included. I'm recommending granting that request with a couple of conditions, and those conditions being the turning over of conduits that are now complete or nearly complete to the city. because one of the main reasons that we want this particular phase complete is because, as we know, we have a lease agreement with Zoom Fiber to provide competitor broadband service in the unserved area for 3 of the 4 conduits that the city will own after RG's work is done. And they are reliant on these conduits to provide service to their customers. So we want to, our goal is to get that done as quickly as possible. And there are sections that are done or could be made complete in a relatively short amount of time that could be turned over to us so that we could provide those to Zoom for their use as contemplated in the lease agreement with them. There are liquidated damages in the contract of $1,000 a day, so technically those are in place now, beginning September 10th until this date. Unless another extension is granted, those would apply. Those liquidated damages are capped at $150,000. I would just, in addition to what I've put in my staff report, just point out reasons for liquidated damages. Typically, you see them a lot, and all of our construction contracts have liquidated damages. The 91st Street project that's going on now has a clause for liquidated damages. Usually, the reason for those is because the construction activities cause some disruption in terms of convenience or actually economic impact. You think about a street being closed and a business is on that street and that harms their business. So within a contract, it's a motivation for the contractor to complete his work expeditiously, or at least have a good excuse as to why you're not completing your work, and you wanted to get an extension. So in this case, I would say that there are some negative impacts. We've heard from residents along the portions that RG's been working on that some of the restoration work has been left undone. And I've not been completely pleased about that. And then RG has really not had a presence in the community for the month of August, and really there's not much this month. And RG, Mike Bosch is here with RG Fiber, and I'd like you, Mr. Mayor, to invite him to get up and address some of these questions for us. But there's reasons why they weren't in town, but they did give some justifications as to why they need the extension request. I think largely some of this stuff is out of their control, some of it is not. But it's my recommendation to grant the extension request till the end of November, on the condition that they turn over those sections of conduit that are nearly complete, but also that the communication between RG and the city and the community could increase to include construction schedules and workforce elements that will be in town, and that we will stay on top of that, verifying that the work is being carried out in a diligent manner, and that we're not just left alone for periods of time from this point moving forward. So,
Mr. Bosch, would you like to come to the podium and add to the comments that Mike made?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Council members and Mayor. Mike Bosch, founder and CEO of RG Fiber. So we created this kind of first of its kind public-private partnership, and some of the things that we've seen come out of this is that other communities, both in Kansas and other states, I know Iowa, Colorado, Georgia, Florida, are already looking at this first of its kind public-private partnership as a model for some of the needs of their broadband. By the way, you'll have to forgive me if I seem a little bit tired. I just got back from the BASC conference out of Wichita, Broadband Awareness and Solutions Conference, put on by the Department of Commerce. I was there because the Lieutenant Governor was mentioning this model as in his keynote as an example of the innovation that's needed in Kansas to eliminate the digital divide. Tomorrow morning, I'll meet with Ajit Pai, who's the FCC chairman, to also describe the same model and highlight how this model has enabled some services in DeSoto that didn't exist before. But all that said, certainly not everything has gone according to plan, and we haven't certainly been perfect in all of it, as Mike mentioned, and we have have been trying to be transparent in the process, accessible, answering questions and being available regardless of the timing of day or day of the week, and we've tried to be responsive to those as well. As Mike mentioned, weather delays compelled us to request the previous extensions. Really, this last one is around an increased demand for our services throughout the region and an extreme skilled labor shortage. Part of that process, we thought we could wrap up a project that was just outside of Gardner quickly and free up a few more resources. This was during August. But we got caught in a few storms. Equipment ultimately got stuck in Gardner, several different pieces of equipment. The build and restoration on that smaller project took significantly longer than desired, and obviously that plan didn't work. On August 8th, the drill was actually pulled out by a $1 million wrecker, and it actually tore off the right tread of our drill, so we had to repair all of that. On August 16th, the plow ripped up a good 2,000-foot stretch on that same project, and on August 20th, we still had crews standing in pits that were knee-deep. So while the weather seemed nice in the air, it certainly wasn't for underground construction. That said, we're excited to return on September 5th. Unfortunately, a little outside my control, there were a few things with regard to the timing of this BASS conference and the governor's office, lieutenant governor's office, wanting to look at this DeSoto model and seeing how that can be highlighted as an example of the solutions and the innovation that could be highlighted in this conference for this week. So I also want to explain a few things in terms of how we've responded to kind of seeing some of these staffing and demand challenges. Over the last 2 months, we have been accelerating our on-the-job training of existing field crew members. That's what we call our construction team, to be distinct from our network engineering team and our office staff, sales, marketing, and whatnot. So we've accelerated the on-the-job training program. A few of our office staff members have actually volunteered and gone out, including our office manager, customer service manager has gone out and buried some drops with us and have been digging potholes and whatnot. Obviously, they don't have the training around heavy equipment to be doing some of that stuff, but we have been able to utilize them to some extent. I know that Tyler has been continuing to recruit and hire directly new staff in that side. We've also been looking at a full review of our field crew pay, incentives, and benefits. There's been a spike in the horizontal directional drilling activity with the KCI project. And a lot of that gets federal funding and does prevailing wages. To give some comparison, our team usually makes about $20 to $25 an hour. We've got a couple 20-year-olds that work with us that are making over $55,000 an hour. You can't buy a cold beverage at JT's, but they're doing that yet. The union boring crew that is doing a lot of the KCI project is offering $30 an hour for you to operate a shovel. $35 if you can operate a drill, and $45 if you know how to steer that drill. So it's certainly been a challenging environment from the staffing of skilled labor side. We've also been implementing a program and working through it with a temp staffing agency, actually locally owned one. Their owner is a DeSoto resident, and looking at how we can utilize temp staffing to scale up. Again, doesn't solve all of our challenges around some of the heavy equipment operation, but it does allow us to get some of these restoration projects cleaned up and do some of the flagging that's necessary for safety and whatnot. Tyler and I have also in the process been vetting several subcontractors and been driving them through the area to taking them through probing, showing them where the rock is at, showing the route that we need to be, and going through specifications, vetting their insurance and whatnot. And certainly if we do that, there are some clauses in our contract where we have to have communication with City Hall about that. But 7 actually of those subcontractors have declined to work in DeSoto due to the scope of work and the rock that they've seen us dig up and excavate. 2 of them are pending in the process. 1 did agree to do the work at $65 a foot. Our contract, breaking it down in terms of the city's portion alone, was about $10 a foot, just to give you a benchmark of kind of where we're at. So it's not an easy solution. I know that several folks in the community have reached out and we've had some conversations about it. But I just wanted to kind of explain what's happening, not making excuses. I'm not any happier about the situation than you are, but I'm happy to answer any questions from you, Mayor, or the council members, or anything in that regard.
Questions for Mr. Bosch?
Yeah, I've went down 95th Street, and I was kind of appalled at the condition of some of your pits, and they're unsafe. There's not the netting and stuff that you had around them is not there now, and it's fallen away, and it's unsafe out there. And due to you being gone such a long period of time, of course, everything's grown up, and you can't see it very well, so it's an unsafe condition out there, and it's a safety hazard, and we need that fixed right away. And you've got a lot of work out there, and it's needs to be done and taken care of. I know you've got other irons in the fire, but you knew that before you accepted those other jobs, what you had here. And being gone so long period of time, and I know that we've had the rain event at the first, and I understand that, but we've had a lot of good weather past that point too. And you know, I think that you've not been diligent with the city in providing the scope that we wanted to know when you were going to be here and what you're working on, because you're not here. And and there's been a lot of complaints about the condition of what you've left the properties in, and I'm sure that you're aware of that, and that needs to be addressed too. And so I guess that's really all I had to say about that right now, Mayor.
Any other questions? Mike?
I just have one question for Mike. Mike, do we have somebody that manages our construction projects? And we talked about the density testing, you know, on 91st that one day, but
Yeah.
Have they went by and looked at these areas? throughout
Yeah,
the past few months, or
yeah,
any
typically
contact?
what occurs, a project inspector we have on site or on staff, and they do all the capital projects inspections. And yeah, there's another layer as well as the right-of-way permits. So when we have, say, utility contractors, it's not our utilities, but it's in the right-of-way, we do a right-of-way permitting process. In this case, these conduits are going to be ours. And so this is more, it's kind of a combination between the two, but we do have the right-of-way permit and we do have the inspection services that goes out and does verify the progress, tries to get these issues like the cleanup and the pits safe, and verifies the location of the.
Did they make any contact with the?
Yeah,
They did?
daily. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as they were in town.
Thank you. That's all.
Mr. Bosch, I assume that you don't have any issue with the condition of turning over the completed sections of conduit, which would primarily be Kill Creek east to probably Corliss Court in that vicinity.
Yes, so we have Sunflower is done. 95th Street from Sunflower to Lexington is nearly done. We have some handholds to set and about a day's worth of drilling on that. I do know that section is dirt and not a lot of rock where we need to go there. And then from, you're right, Kill Creek east to Corliss Court. I don't have a problem turning over completed conduits, and I think the ones I mentioned I can complete pretty soon.
That would also be Kill Creek north across K10.
Yes, sir. You're right.
Mine are more comments really than questions for Mike, but I'm going to do it now since we're in the middle of this. When this project started and the contract came out and the dates were set forth, I was a little surprised that this was going to be done in the amount of time it was projected that it would be done in. But it's not my business, and I don't know how long it takes to bore and do this type of thing. But with that being said, the contract that we agreed on had these dates in it and these costs in it, and maybe the ones that we didn't choose were going to take longer and be more money, but now I'm finding there's probably a reason for that. I'm not at all excited that we're trying to extend this again. I'm not really truly convinced that even if we give you to November 30th, that it's going to get done. Nothing that we've seen so far proves to me that will happen. The model is a great model, and it's exciting for the city to be doing this just as well as it is for you. But I would rather you were here working than getting recognition or doing what we were doing down in Wichita or somewhere else. And truthfully, the fact that you left us for this great model and this big thing that we're trying to do to go to Gardner, and their project was more important to us, when we're asking for extended deadlines, that it just doesn't sit well with me. I've told people before that I'm not really a big fan of a lot of construction things because there's always an excuse and it never is on time, and it's okay for it to be that way because that's the construction world. And I just don't believe in that. If we're supposed to get things done, it needs to get done. And your timing said you would be able to do it. We've extended it, and you would have to say a lot here to convince me that the rock that you have to go through, yet you are going to be able to get through even by the end of November. Thank you.
I might add one more thing on kind of following on that, though. I will make the observation on completion date number 2, which is delivering broadband services to the city facilities January 18th of 2020. That one has been exceeded. Service has been delivered to City Hall, correct, Mike? Yes. And we are operating on RG service, which now has created a net savings to our city operating costs because of that service, right? So the city is benefiting now because that was delivered early. Some of the public Wi-Fi has been delivered and service has been initiated in the unserved areas. So relative to completion date number 2, progress has been made well ahead of those dates, correct?
That's true. Yeah, that's all true.
Rob, any questions? Oh, sorry, you not done, Kevin?
No, did you have a comment? Or no, if there's no other comments, people have contacted me and by email and directly, and I've been telling the public that I'm not going to get out in front of Mr. Brungart's responsibility and duty to administer the contract. That's why we're hiring him. He has to keep up with this every day. Personally, as a council member, I guess I would like to see better progress reporting, maybe as an admonishment a bit in the role that you've got to administer this contract. But I'm not about to try to jump in and say I think something should be done. I think that's why we pay you to do this job every day. So given that, I'm in support of Mike's recommendation, and he obviously is in these conversations way more than I am. So I don't know if an action item is required here, but
what is?
Well, certainly, I don't know that one is, but I definitely wanted to get council direction.
Yeah, because if you have administrative authority, you're coming to us just for advice. I don't think there's
policy direction, essentially.
I do have a couple comments in that as we started out, this has been something that has been a good model. I understand other cities looking at it going, we want to do that, but this was the city that you settled with to begin with. So it's a city you need to finish. A model is not going to be good if it's not completed and it's left partway done. And in going forward and in talking about this whole process, there could be better oversight by Mike. I am in favor of allowing some extension on this deadline. I'm not happy about the absence that's occurred, why it's occurred in the months that have been good. I do regret this council's done some phenomenal things. We've moved things forward, but I absolutely do regret granting the Zoom contract when we granted it. It wasn't completely fair to how the process worked. It wasn't handled well by parties. And in doing so, it's created a lot of unnecessary issues. So that said, in moving forward, I mean, you have said you'd have the unserved areas done in 12 months. To me, that is the number one deadline that I want to see. So I don't mind saying, okay, extend it. I do have some skepticism, like Lori, about whether it's going to be able to be done on the conduits, even if we give you to November. But I'm looking at that 12-month area for the unserved going, that's what I want to see. And then you've got another 12 months to finish the city, which is going to be really interesting to see how well you do that.
Anyone? I just, Mr. Bosch, you can hear our frustration, and I would echo a lot of those comments that it was, there won't be another extension. I can pretty much guarantee that. But I would echo Rob's comment that getting the unserved areas within the time frame outlined is the critical. I mean, that was the critical. That was the whole point of what we were trying to do. So I mean, we can't lose focus of what we're trying to accomplish and get caught up in some of the other stuff that was in the thing. Let's focus on the main goal and let's get that done. But yeah, let's bring this model home so that it is a I don't know, beacon of hope to those that don't have broadband internet in the state of Kansas. And I'll quit pontificating now. And
I think enough been said. I don't have anything to add.
okay.
The only thing I would like to say is I would like to hear Mike, before he leaves tonight, what is his commitment now that he's heard our complaints and our views, and what's your commitment now to going forward from here, and let us know exactly what's going to happen.
Sure, come on up, Mike. Just probably the bigger thing would be to probably present your completion plan to Mike that he can share it. But if you want to express some verbal commitment to completion, we would be welcome to hear that.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for your comments. As painful as they are to hear, I understand, and I'm hearing you. I will take care of the safety things. I just sent messages over to my leads to make sure we eat those areas, we get those fencing pieces back up, and we police that entire area on 95th to make sure that we have those done. I'm hearing you on turning over the completed items. I think we can get that done probably within a week time frame. On those completed section, there are some areas that we have to set some handholds in and finish drilling, like closer to Lexington area. The next piece of our priority, we'll set drills up between Lexington and Kill Creek and begin connecting that segment as well. That segment obviously is where the rock quarry is at. We will be either punching with our own. We will be bringing in some subcontractor. We're just trying to figure out which way to do that. But it's going to be very clear to us that we need to have a bigger class drill, basically, to push through that. So that's what we're executing on, is finding which equipment and sub that we need to be able to do that. So you'll see all of those things taking place, and we'll be happy to report on those as we're making progress in a play-by-play fashion. So I'll make those commitments, and we'll see what a bigger class drill does in that extremely rocky area through that quarry section. So,
Mike, while you're here, when you bring your subs in, and I have shared this with Zoom as well earlier this evening, make sure everybody's safe out there. You got plenty of placarding, and that everybody's high vis, and that nobody's getting struck by cars and hurt and things like that. So,
yes, sir.
You need to bring them in, make sure they're aware to do all that, and I shared it with him as well.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So action from us. Do you need any? What? Motion? You want to?
I don't. Well, if you wish, but what I'm hearing is.
We could make I mean, so someone will make.
Yeah,
a motion
I'll make a motion in support of Mike Brungart's recommendation to extend the completion date 1 of the agreement to November 30th, with the conditions that stipulated that the completed sections of conduit be turned over for the city's use.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Councilman Ritter. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
1 second, please.
Okay.
Lane,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Sonamichael,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdoch.
No.
Okay,
Thank you, council. Motion carried.
all right. Moving on in our agenda, we do not have an executive session, I'm assuming, since I
That's
haven't heard about it.
correct.
Advisory reports, city administrator, Mike, what do you have for us?
Yeah, a few quick items, council. After we purchased the Public Works facility building, and we know the street department's going to be moving out of that, the area they're in now, we haven't had any discussion really as a council as to what the long-term plan for that property might be. There's been several ideas that I've heard, some involving redevelopment, a public-private partnership redevelopment for economic purposes, some involving just generally making it park
Folks?
Hold up
space.
a minute here.
Oh,
May I ask you to please refrain from talking because we're being recorded. Everything you're saying back there is being recorded and heard, so we can't hear up here. So if you would take your conversation outside, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
thanks.
Sorry, Mayor.
That's quite all right.
So, I don't know that we need to dive into the weeds on it tonight, but, perhaps maybe we could have a couple of council members, and staff kind of get an ad hoc committee together to come up with ideas and, just about what we want to do with this. We've had in our capital improvements plan for the last couple of years some money to demolish the old water treatment building, and that was before we knew we were going to have the opportunity to move the street department out. I think the property as it sits now is worth negative. It's got a negative worth.
Isn't that negative because
Yeah.
of the required demolition?
It is, and then I worry about environmental on the site too, because they've been operating a water plant for quite a while there. So, and the street department with the fluids and all the stuff that could go along with that. So, we just need to brainstorm on that. We need some ideas about what we think we want to do long term. I met earlier this week with a person who's in the development business that had an idea about some workforce housing on that property, but we just have I don't think we're quite ready for that sort of thing right now.
I think we need to decide what we think it ought to be.
We
and
do.
Then, and then we
Absolutely.
can figure out
Yeah.
who we need to partner with to make it so.
Yeah.
Anybody.
So that's it. I can reach out by email next week to see who might want to have some ideas about that and sit down.
Well, I have some ideas on that property.
Well, good. So you're on the.
I'm always full of ideas.
Yeah. Well, let me follow that up with an
All right.
email and see who wants to kind of contribute to that, and we can have the mayor and 2 council members, but no more. So,
Unless we do it at a meeting.
unless we
can
do it
all
at a
talk
meeting,
about it.
yeah, we could have a work session, if that's the direction we want to go.
If we have that much interest.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind helping, but it would have to be.
Okay. All right, I'll follow that up with an email.
Mike, do you have anything
I
else?
do.
For us
A reminder, Whitney sent out our ribbon cutting on the 27th. Didn't quite gonna work, and so Whitney sent out another doodle poll. I know we hate doodle polls, but we're trying to shoot. It kind of has to be a Friday because we can't really get out to the water treatment plant site Monday through Thursday because they're remediating explosives out there. So Friday they don't work out there, so we can. The idea is we'd congregate. It's kind of a celebration for all 3 facilities: water treatment plant, the distribution building, and the public works. We congregate at the public works building. We're thinking about renting a bus to take council members plus 1 out to the other 2 facilities. So if you could reply to that doodle poll, then that'll give Whitney a target date to make all that happen.
Okay. I know I'm on the bad list that has not responded.
I wasn't gonna say any names.
I'll own it, Mike. I'll own it.
I replied today.
I did today also.
Yeah. Okay. The 11th is barbecue for the chamber, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. The last thing I wanted to let you know about, after our health insurance increases from our current carrier, NPR, we're in that Midwest Public Risk group. You remember, I think think in 2018 we had a 12.5 or 13% increase. This year we had a 23% increase on short notice. Made the decision there that we need to check the market. And so toward that end, I met with CBiz, Monty Giddings. They're a health benefits consultant. And Monty Giddings had done this work for the city historically. So he has some historical knowledge about us. I'm sure there are dozens of others that could do a similar thing, but I did get a proposal for them to take our history, our employee profile, and do an initial analysis, a market analysis for us. You know, compare what we're getting for what we're paying, and look at the market and get that generated back to come to some recommendations on that. The fee for that's $2,500, so that's within my spending authority, and I'm inclined to proceed with that. Patrick's reviewing their proposal right now to make sure we're not getting into trouble. But then phase 2 of that would be if their recommendations come back. The phase 2 is sort of a brokerage deal, and that's after the initial phase, and so we're not under any obligation to proceed any further with our relationship with them. But I think it's definitely an exercise worth doing, and so I'd like to proceed with that unless there's major
Any objections from
questions
council
about
to Mike's? Save us some money, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we got to spend some first, so I want you to be aware of that.
That's usually the way it works.
But usually how it works. I'll be out of the office tomorrow, but back Monday. So
Okay.
that's all I had.
All right.
Can I ask a question? On the water facility at 95th and Sunflower, right? Which we're be celebrating. That was the one where the city's undertook being its own, right?
Yeah.
Have you tabulated the results of that relative to the construction bids that we received?
Yeah, we have. Brad, where are we at?
I don't have a hard number for you, but we're about, the low bid price was around $500,000, $500,000. We'll probably get this finished pretty good.
150. We're not sure it was worth
There's
that.
some agony. Involved, right, at least the dollars will work out to our favor.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to staff and Doug, and I'm sure.
Yeah, Doug did a lot of hands-on
took
work.
part in that. Thank you.
Steve did too, and Brad's been. Yeah, there's a lot of the street department. Kind of everybody had to pitch
It's not
in.
gonna drive Doug to retire.
No, he loves projects. Yeah, he likes projects.
Yeah, I can't pull that off for everything we do, but for this case, that's a part of the I was hoping to hear that was part of the success story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Patrick,
Nothing for me.
Brad. Thank you. Lana, what do you got for us?
Nothing other than thank you for Patrick taking minutes for me when I'm gone, and I will be leaving on September the 29th for Birmingham, United Kingdom, and I'll be gone the first week of October, talking and handing out DeSoto pins. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Sure. All right. Council comments. Danny, you want to start us tonight?
Got nothing, Mayor.
All right. Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I have a couple things. I had a resident out on Corliss. He's concerned with the 83rd Street and Corliss turn on, I guess it would be the southwest corner. There's a culvert there and it kind of drops off. And on the east side, there is a concrete protective, like,
Little guardrail type
Guardrail.
thing.
so it looks like this one's either been knocked off sometime or missing, but he's afraid that somebody's, it's hard to make that turn sometimes, as many of you guys probably do, but it drops off about 4, 5, 6 feet there. Back to you, right?
Here, there, right?
Yeah, that's it.
The head wall.
But
So
across
there
the-
was a little thing like that.
Right. Now there's
Is that the
no.
one you're talking about?
Right, that is
Okay.
the one I'm talking about.
All right.
So if we could look at that,
Yep.
Almost like
come in with a Jersey barrier or something. Some
a
other-
little extension, but it's an old box culvert.
Yeah, an extension would be the thing to
Ideal,
do.
but-
Extend that, but then this ditch comes down. We'll figure something out. Yeah.
He's concerned for winter time.
Yep.
Then I just wanted to reinforce maybe making sure that all of our staff that work, including our own staff that work out in the streets, are following proper guidelines for signage and PPE and wearing apparel. I noticed I actually had a day off today and went up. I was on top of the hill and there was another city crew working from another city, nearby city, that probably did not have enough signage out for the area they were working in. So that brought that to light. Okay. Last item is thank you for paving Waverly, but I did notice today when I was at home, because they've been turning into 98th and backing up, that the backup alarm is not working on that dump truck. And that was a concern from another time ago. So
Yeah, I thought
please check that.
we'll do.
Okay. Rob?
I was going to say nothing, but then Kevin reminded me. I did have a bunch of texts from a individual at the corner of Waverly and 95th about the city equipment being parked on their property for extended periods of time.
The paving project?
Uh-huh. And so it was actually parked on their property, and then they actually got RG Fiber to install to their house.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And then the city crews ran over the fiber line with that equipment.
And broke it.
Because they hadn't quite gotten it buried yet. So I
Waverly
don't.
and 95th.
They're next to. They're on the north side.
North side.
That-
Where they were parking.
yeah.
Keep going a little
Keep,
bit.
well, that's their. Well, no, go back. That's their property. That's their property, but their driveway is backed by the power
It's back.
plant.
His
Yeah.
manhole is right on the corner.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
and their drop
And we-
line
and
comes
we-
from here
yes.
all the way.
Right.
Oh,
we were-
I
Yeah.
thought you were
And we were-
talking
No, so the city equipment had been parked there, so I was getting texts about, is this city, is this private? And then, yeah, they finally, because they'd been getting about 2 megabits on the internet, so they were looking all forward to it, and then they got run over.
And we ran the drop over.
You ran the line.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it broke it or not. They were concerned, but that was just kind of being considerate of if you're putting things on properties and things like that.
I noticed the pink markers today. It's ran through the trees.
Mm-hmm. So.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. Lori?
I have nothing. I think I've said enough tonight.
Maybe a couple of economic development topics. One, we had a business retention expansion visit to Hudamaki. Spent a fair amount of time there, got a lot of good feedback. They've done a lot of remodeling inside their office, which is obviously an indication that they're here to stay. But I was pleasantly surprised to learn about the jobs that they have there, and really some fairly high-paying jobs, but also a fairly diverse workforce. So I was happy to, I came away feeling really good that that's a really, really good community partner that we have here and a real asset as an employer in our community. Today, I attended the KCADC quarterly investors update where they rattle off economic opportunities that are being pursued in the metropolitan area. And I guess the good report is that that they say that their KCADC is as busy as they've ever been in project pursuits and proposal opportunities in the metropolitan area. So hopefully, there's opportunities for DeSoto in there as well. Kind of also part of the reason of making the highlight that I hope we create clarity in our economic development initiative as opposed to a particular action on a rezoning. So very, very positive and optimistic. And they also talked about some data that they're going to be putting out on views of the Kansas City metropolitan area that may be communicated more broadly. But what I took away from it was the DeSoto community has a lot of appeal to the workforce for the kinds of companies that are being recruited into the area as well. So even if we don't benefit from a business maybe landing in DeSoto, I think DeSoto provides a lot of the kind of qualities that they're learning that employees of these kinds of companies are looking for. So that was positive. Even if we don't win the industry, we may win the residents. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Somebody got the pay ordinance? I hope.
And Mayor, if you'll follow me back to my office, the ordinances for this evening. I got and left them in
All right.
Patrick's box.
All right. I don't really have anything to add tonight, so I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Oh, then I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.